Sometimes life lets you down and you feel that you are done. You just want a morning run because the fun is all gone. But sometimes life makes you proud when you look far and wide, when you leave the pain behind and see the brighter side. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you.
The new channel. The new channel. The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following show are those of the hosts, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the new channel. We are here to help you see the new you. This is Nato Agbayani, and this is the family business. Welcome back, and you're still watching The Family Business with Nato Agbayani. Okay, so we'd like to bring you in, and our new guests today will be Mylene Abiva of Felta, and we also have a guest, a family consultant, Mr. Neil Montesclaros from Premier Family Business. So without any further ado, we'd like to bring Miss Mylene Abiva into the show. Yes.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello, Mylene. All right.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
We're good. Busy
Yeah.
Saturday.
Busy. So before I interview you, I will just give the audience a little background about who you are. Yeah. Of course, Mylene is a friend from the Philippine Marketing Association. She's the CEO of Felta. It's a 54-year-old company engaged in innovative instructional materials. So they do a lot of robotics education to many schools in the Philippines. Felta is also the education solution provider of Intel, and since 2012. So they're a gold partner of Microsoft. Tama ba yun? Is that right?
Yeah, gold
Yeah,
partner of Intel
gold partner.
and global training partner of Microsoft.
Yeah, and she's also the past president of the Philippine Marketing Association. She's a certified professional marketeer, an organizer of the Philippine Robotics Olympiad, also the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. It's an award for women entrepreneurs. And also, you won the most innovative company, right? In
Yes.
Asia CEO,
2017.
2017 Asia CEO with Rebecca and the team, no? And then, of course, she's the president of the Women Business Council Philippines. also an entrepreneur, a mountain climber, a master in multitasking, and she is the powerful, ayan, she's powerful, relevant, graceful, instinctive, and compassionate because we know her from her advocacy. So, welcome, Mylene. How are you?
Thank
Welcome
you.
to
Thank you
the
so much.
family business. So, I'll go right into the questions, and I know there's so much you can share with our audiences, with our audience. So, first of all, how has the pandemic fared? I mean, how have you fared in this pandemic? Did you encounter a lot of challenges in the crisis, or were you able to thrive in the crisis?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
initially we know that the COVID pandemic really struck hard. You know, the
Hmm.
impact is not just on the say on the quarantine, the service industry, the hotels, but
Hmm.
honestly, even the education sector has been impacted,
Hmm.
really impacted, because
Yes.
even in our company, we are delivering robotics kits, devices, and
Hmm.
well, digital products. But then when the COVID pandemic struck, the first thing to do is to pivot right away into the digital products. So
Hmm.
we had some projects in the pipeline, like setting up speech laboratories and all that, which had to be put on hold because we are on because of the lockdowns. But now it's back in progress. So the effect on us is really more of the preparations of the schools. So for this school
Yeah.
year, supposedly have started last June, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
because of the COVID pandemic, it's now pushed back. Private schools started last this August. So on the finance side, we were still able to manage because of the collections we have from in preparation for this school year.
Okay.
So we're blessed about that. And then the first thing I did with our company is to have a meeting, virtual meeting with our team, and streamline all the products that we have that we can deliver on a remote learning basis. And since we
Okay.
are a Microsoft global training partner, we and a robotics provider, we now started the virtual robotics for training for
Wow.
free for school. So
For
it
free.
became yes, for free. We started
Wow.
giving
Okay.
robotics training for teachers for free, as well as remote learning for tutorials for teachers as well. So in essence, what the first thing we did was to first equip the teachers and the school administrators and the schools, even the students, on
Hmm.
how to deal with the digital platform.
Okay. That's like a lot of things you're doing all at the same time.
Yes.
To think it's the pandemic and a lot of because of the lockdown, a lot of companies are losing. A lot of them have no operations, and it's good to know that well, the education sector which you had is already doing well, no? Um, well, what's the story behind Felta? I mean, how did you start? It's 54 years old, right? How did you start the business?
Well, I'm what you call in Tagalog, ama,
Hmm.
anak ng may-ari. If you want
Oh,
English, COO, child of owner.
CEO. Yeah, yeah.
Diba? Yun. So, actually, I didn't start. So, my parents started the business in
Yeah.
1966. At the time, I was the third daughter. I come from a family of six girls
Six.
and one boy.
Okay.
Yes. So, marami kaming girls. And my father used to work for Abiva Publishing. And
Oh,
at
yes,
that time,
Abiva.
yes, my
Oo.
grandmother.
Oo.
So, still in the family business. And then, ang sweldo lang niya at that time is 500 pesos in the 60s. Sabi niya, kulang yon panggatas namin for us.
For all the kids.
Yes, at that
Yes.
time, tatlo pa lang kami, so 3 kids. So, it was
Mm-hmm.
their idea to put up a business which doesn't compete with the publishing industry, but
Okay.
to be the publishing company rather, but to supplement. So my father had the foresight that in the future, textbooks will not solely be used. We will be in a non-print. So that's how it started. So
I
we
mean,
introduced,
even in
yeah,
as early as 60s, he was able
yes,
to see
60s.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, my father had the foresight kasi
Hmm.
he travels a lot, abroad
Yes.
and locally. And then nakita niya na magkakaroon talaga ng technology-driven instruction, even at that
Right.
time. So we started with introducing the full-color textbook. Saka if you remember yung mga full-color slides, saka yung mga film strips, kami
Yes.
yung
Yes.
nag-introduce noon. Saka yung mga
Oh,
transparencies, dati sa simbahan lang ginagamit, di ba? We
yung
use
mga
it for schools.
Ektachrome
Oo.
sa Kodak.
Ganon, oo,
Yeah.
Kodak. Oo,
Oh,
kami nag-introduce.
wow.
Tapos, eventually, we ventured into manufacture of science equipment. Tapos, eventually, we were offered by Lego Education to start robotics program in the Philippines.
When was that?
That
Yung
was 20
partnership
years
with
ago.
Lego.
Yes,
Wow. Okay.
1997. 1997 was the start of our negotiations, but we inked the deal. We signed our contract in 1999, so about 21 years ago.
Oh.
And at that time, robotics, when I first talked to teachers, they said, "What's that?" Kala lang nila is Voltes 5 or
Oh.
Transformer
Oh
movies.
my. You must have been in your teens.
No,
Oh,
I was already working for the family
working
business.
na. Okay.
I was
So,
working in the US for several years, and
okay.
then my father asked me to come home to help in the family business. Sabi niya, because I have an older sister who got married and lived in the US. I have
Yes.
another sister who got married and lives in Australia. Sabi niya, ayoko na ng isang daughter may export, kailangan dito ka lang sa Philippines. So as a
Okay.
dutiful daughter, I came home. I'm not the eldest, I'm the third. I'm the third daughter.
So in terms of ownership, you're the third daughter, you're CEO now, but like who's part of the business? Not just you or some other siblings are still part.
All. Uh, well, which is interesting. It's a good question
Mm.
you asked.
Mm.
When I was appointed president of the company, my
Yeah.
father implemented what you call the one-child policy, just like in China, right?
Okay,
One-child
okay,
policy,
one
yes.
child.
Which I believe was very effective because maraming mga family business nagsasara dahil nakakaingitan ng there are too many conflicts within the company. So with the one child policy that they have, only one child can run the family business, but all
Mhm.
are stockholders. So that's what
Yes.
happened. So
So they have
I call
equity.
myself the workhorse.
Oh, they have equity, but you're the main person. You're
Yes.
the focal person to drive the
Yes.
business.
Yes. And then of course, all the decisions are still brought to the board or the
Mm-hmm.
shareholders so that there's transparency. So, and we're a close family business. Many offers to go IPO, to go public,
Wow.
but we
Oo.
decided that we also know that there are some companies who struggled after opening their business to the public. So
Right, that's
we
right.
decided to just stay as a close family business.
Oh, it's not that easy. Sometimes, syempre, your stocks are diluted and the ownership is really um,
Diluted.
diluted. Hindi ka na
Yeah.
yung main decision maker, so there will be many decision makers. But
Yes.
in the course of the 20 years, more than, di ba? 54 years. Parang, how are you able to preserve like your family assets, your tawag namin dito, mga generational wealth. How are you able to protect those assets and make sure that you're able to grow them appropriately, and then the ownership is really managed, and then the board members are um, still have a say in let's say running the business. So how are you able to manage that, like amongst your siblings?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, I like that question because a lot
mm,
of companies, family business, who are run by, say, for example, like one of the siblings or the children, like
mm.
myself, is there is always I would say, question about the proportion of shares, right?
Yes,
Or
yes.
sibling rivalry cannot really be taken away. It
Mhm.
all boils down from childhood days. Lalabas talaga at lalabas. So,
That's
so I
right.
have a story, I have a story before I answer that question.
Mm.
When my father passed away some
Mhm.
12 years ago,
12 years.
it was it was actually a of course tragic moment for us, a very sad time.
Right,
But
right.
it was then that I realized that he really prepared the company and our
Mhm.
family. You know why? Because he had a heart
Mm.
attack. It was
Oh,
yeah, it
sudden.
was unforeseen. Yeah, it's a sudden illness, or he was comatose for about 3 weeks, but he couldn't talk.
Okay.
So all our assets were under the company or corporation,
Mhm.
which saved us from a lot of taxes,
Mhm.
right? Especially if the one of the founders pass away, you will the children would have to deal with the estate tax, which is a lot of
That's
money.
true.
So
Uh-huh.
if you have your assets already in the name of the corporation, it's now easy for you to part away. For
To
example,
divide.
yeah, you divide because you already
Mhm.
have allocated shares in the company. So with either property assets or shares of stocks
Mhm.
or other assets that they may have, it can be now divided equally as a corporation.
That's right.
So
So
that's my
you were a-
yeah,
he
my
was able
learning
to do
from
that, no? Before
yeah.
before he passed, no? So it's very
Yes.
interesting. So like the journey now, for example, with so you're second gen, right? And then you mentioned that third generation, your son is also involved in the business now.
Yes. Actually, I have opened the position to my other siblings, and
Okay.
they have children who are based here
Yeah.
in the Philippines. So
Okay.
I asked them, I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be my son, or I have two
Mm-hmm.
sons, to take
Yeah.
over or to be trained. I told
How
them
old? How old are
yes,
they? Your two sons. How old?
my youngest is 25, and I have a
Mm,
28, my
okay.
eldest. The 28-year-old is with our company.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
I
Very.
was saying to my siblings that I offered the position, but as
Mm-hmm.
I said, we have to maintain the one child policy rule. Since we
Right.
have several companies anyway, we wanted to offer some of the subsidiaries to the other siblings. However, no takers, but it was my son who asked if he can join the company. He came
Yeah.
from a conglomerate, so a multinational company, and he wanted to help in the family business.
With that conglomerate, what was he doing prior
He
to
was,
joining
yes, yes,
Felta?
he was a brand activation officer of that
Wow.
conglomerate.
Okay.
Yes. So he worked there for 2.5 years, which is
Okay.
good because I always advise family businesses that you cannot have how would you call this, a good value education
Mhm.
to pass on to the next generation if they did not come from another company. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is that the work ethics of those children who goes straight to your company is different
Mhm.
from those who have experience outside. So it's competence, it's experience, and they add more value to your company than just going straight from school.
Parang it's like paid training, 'di ba? Even
Yes.
before they work for the family business, they get to learn how it is outside and how is the work ethic. And I think even for big conglomerates, like I think some families, like I think Ayala, for example, they have an apprenticeship program even for the children, and it takes long. It takes long for them before they actually reach the uh, sea level, and the family makes sure that they learn everything they need to learn before they go to and manage the bigger parts of the company. So this is very interesting. So right now, your son is handling the brand activation as well, or he's doing something
Actually,
else?
yes, we took on the we took on the position brand
Yes.
activation because
Mm.
we have what we call Philippine Robotics Academy school. So
Yes.
he's handling all the schools under the program. So
Hmm.
he's quite busy about it because we offer robotics. subscriptions where it includes the ebooks right now. So we transformed to ebooks, and then we also have the tutorials, the monitoring of the schools, and also the teacher training and the competitions also.
So how many employees do you have at this point?
In the back end, we have only about 42, but in
Mhm.
the field, we have 60 people.
60.
So, yeah, 60 people in the field all over the Philippines.
So the 60 people, what do they do? They arrange partnerships with schools.
Well, we call them the franchise business operators. So they are
Okay.
actually master distributors, if you can call it in a
Yes.
different term.
Yes.
So that means they're not really paid on a salary basis, but they're on a
Mhm.
commission basis. So master distributors, but we call them franchise business operators. So they have their own office and their own people to take care of.
So these are like offices who already have a particular business, and they are, kumbaga, the franchisee for Felta in that particular area. Is that right?
Yes,
That's the
yes, yeah.
most.
Basically, yeah, business partners or not really franchisees per se,
Oh,
as the term says, because they don't
yes.
pay any franchise fee, but we
Oo.
just call them franchise business operators.
But they're like they push the they push
Yes,
the business in their particular area. Very interesting.
yes.
Um, I think I think this is the first time you've been invited, or at least in a common platform. I think this is the first time that we're talking about your family business. Usually, it's
Yes,
about the work that you do, right?
yes.
And um, with PMA, with the other stuff, and of course with Delta. But what have you learned? Like, I mean, over the last, or over by being CEO for the last how many years already?
Since 2000, so over 20 years.
So
So
20 years you were
21 years.
CEO.
Yes.
Well, what have you realized over that time? I mean, in terms of really handling the family business from your parents to you, and then now in that stage of really passing it, well, passing some of the tasks to your kids. What have you learned from all of this?
Well, I learned a lot actually in
Mm-hmm.
the past 20 years. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
joined them in 1989, but just like you said, I worked through the ranks, and
Mm-hmm.
I learned all the aspects of the business, because you have to be able to learn everything to know in the business, because what if one of your critical personnel
Mm-hmm.
either resigns or gets sick, or
That's right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to pitch in for that person. And what I really learned is you have to really balance family harmony,
Mm-hmm.
profitability,
Yeah.
and also being agile with your product mix or your product
Mm-hmm.
offerings,
Mm-hmm.
because these are special ingredients or important ingredients for family businesses to be resilient, especially during this COVID crisis.
Yes, that's right.
Being agile and having the support of your family, who are stakeholders, is really important to give you the
Mm-hmm.
trust that you can, like a sailor, to sail away between the rough
Yeah,
seas and then overcome this storm that we're going through.
that's right. So that leads me to my last question. We have short, very short lang. No? I wish we could have you for 2 hours pa more. But a lot of families in business right now are really suffering in terms of losses, loss of sales, loss of operations, and it's really difficult. I think I don't know how I think Secretary Mon already gave a figure that X% have closed shop. I think more than 25, 26% have closed shop. So
Yes, that's true.
what advice can you give these families in business based on your own experience? And that's both, I think, financial, and how can we inspire them to, keep the faith, keep on fighting for the business and the family? What can you advise them as being a CEO of your own family business?
Well, first of all, I just want to also again share a story that
Mm-hmm.
the Asian financial crisis, right, hit us in 1997. It was the start. And
That's right.
then, yes, I was already being eyed as, I was trying to help with the all the financial concerns that we have in the family business because we import.
Mm.
We're very heavy in importations. At that time,
Importation,
as you
yes,
know, diba, the dollar was very strong, the peso was very weak, and then even
yes.
the bank rates, the interest rates were as much as 24%, 30%. I mean, some ridiculous rates that really a lot of businesses really got hurt. So we're one of
Mm.
them. And the lesson that I learned from that experience was that you have to really prepare for the storm. You know, like what
Mm.
for any emergency eventualities like what happened. That
That's right.
time, we had to do financial restructuring with our bankers, and
Mm-hmm.
then we had to think of different distribution ways for the imported products that we have, which we already
Mm.
imported in the Philippines, and then
Right.
it was supposed to be for the Department of Education. So, being prepared, just like being prepared for any storm or any natural calamity, we have to prepare. And cash is king. To have a
Yeah. Cash.
to be liquid in your banks, it's important. And
Mm.
if possible, you can self finance your if you have enough funds to self finance or for your capital needs and not borrow
Mm-hmm.
from the banks. Then that would be a good idea for you. And then
Yes.
most especially is to really be agile. Think
Mm-mm.
of what will sell in the future. Now,
Okay.
we know that there are a lot of businesses, as you said, are suffering. But let's also remember you have to cut your loss. If you think,
That's
if
right.
because I mentor for Go Negosyo, and I
Mm.
tell them, you cannot sustain 200,000 a month on operations when you know that you do not have the income coming in. So, nauubos na lahat. Binenta na yung bahay, mga sasakyan. I said, you have to know when it's time to hibernate. It's not really to quit. You know, tayong mga
Right.
negosyante, we are not quitters. We were born to be able to withstand, but we should learn to know when it's time to hibernate and cut our loss. And we whatever money that we have in our bank or in our possession, we can use that either to for cost of living and cut muna on the expenses. Yeah.
That's
So
that's right.
don't be afraid to know when it's time to first to hibernate. To hibernate.
Mhm. Okay. Wow. We have such a short time. I wish we could discuss some more about your family business, but um, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. No, I mean, I think it's really important that people are inspired by what families in business do. This is the role of the show really is to get people inspired uh, and also family businesses to be inspired for them to see what's happening in the other families in business so they can really like, oh, paano ba pwede natin gawin? What can we do? What can we do to pivot? No? So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing the story of Felta. Again, it's our honor to have you here. Hopefully, in the next shows, you can still be invited. I know you're very busy. And well, this is all the time we have now for this segment. Again, thank you. I mean, God bless the company, Felta, and I know you're into education, and hopefully, a lot more students, a lot more learners go into robotics, to go into technology, because we really need that to really prosper as a country. So again, Mylene, I'd like to say thank you and
Thank you for having me.
hope we can have you again soon. Thank
Sure.
you very
Anytime.
much.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Nato. And God
Okay.
bless us all.
Yes,
Don't give
that's
up.
right.
Don't give up. To all our viewers, don't give up.
Right, right.
There's
Thank you,
always a
Mylene.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Correct, correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mylene Abiva of Felta. She's the CEO, and she shared with us their family business story. And when we come back, we'll be having our next guest. And stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching The Family Business on TNC. So, thank you. Welcome back. You're watching The Family Business on TNC. Now, we have our next guest. He's the COO. All right. So, we'd like to invite everyone to watch all our shows: The Big Picture, HR Hotline, of course, The Family Business, The Fourth Project, Usapang Beauty, U-Turn, The Home Buyer, The Puppet Stories, the NC Marketplace, YOLO, The Talk, After Shift, Win Within, Danny, Foreign Affairs, and of course, The Family Business. Welcome back. So now we're going to have our guest, our second guest for today. His name is Neil Montesclaros. He's the COO of Premier Family Business Consulting. So we'd like to welcome Neil to the show.
From Cebu City.
Hi, Neil.
Hi, Nato.
Before I start, I'll read your resume. I'll
Okay.
read a little
Resume.
about, yeah, I'll read a little about Neil. He's a good friend from Premier Family Business Consulting. He's also the CEO and Executive Director of Premier Family Business Consulting. He was in the education sector for 23 years and in the aspect of leadership and organizational development. So he is a magna cum laude uh, graduate of a degree with a degree of philosophy in the Don Bosco College. Is that right, Neil? It's a seminary, right? So he could have been a priest in Canlubang, and then okay, and he had his MA and PhD units in organizational development with Southeast Asia Interdisciplinary Development Institute, or SAIDI. His extensive experience in management and administration has made him a visionary also in goal setting and strategic planning and implementation. He is also educated in the US for the FFI Gen. It's called Global Education Network. And he has a certificate in family business advising from the Family Firm Institute in the US. So, with that, we'd like to welcome Neil. Good afternoon, Neil. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Nato, and thanks for inviting me for this show and to
Yeah,
share some good information for everybody.
that's right. So, what we have in the show is like we have first we have the people who give their stories, their family business stories. So afterwards, we have the family business consultant, so they can like analyze how about what's happening or how was the journey of these families and what's the science behind it. So that's what we want to learn. Yan po yung gusto nating matutunan dito. This show is really for families in business, also for those who want to be inspired by the families in business that we invite. So, ika nga family business is everybody's business. So, with that, I'll start with the questions. Neil, first and foremost, thank you for joining us straight from Cebu. So, Neil is now in Cebu, no? So, this is
Correct.
really an international international show. We have people in Cebu. We have people. Mylene was just here from Quezon City. So, well, can I ask you, what do you think are the challenges being faced by families in business during the pandemic? Now, in the crisis, what do you think?
I think some of the crisis of family business was mentioned also by Mylene, especially yung mga sinabi niyang messages or tips. At this time, since sales are down, uh, certain industries, certain services, certain products have really gone down because of this pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why, related to what Mylene was saying, cash is king. So this is where liquidity of the family business becomes very useful, no?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to manage low revenues for the past what 6 months na ba or five
Mm.
months already. So that's one to
Almost six.
manage the, yeah, to manage. The other one is HR. So lahat 'yon may impact sa human resource. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one thing is you have low sales. Low sales would mean also how do you reorganize your HR? Then third is basically a repositioning of the company or the family business in terms of okay, losing tayo sa company or sa business na to ngayon. So where do we go from here? So how do we reinvent ourselves? Mylene mentioned the word pivot. Pivot would
Yeah.
essentially mean from the specific industry that you don't close it down, but how do you make it adapt? But there is also what we call you diversify yourself. Let us say
Mm-hmm.
one of your businesses really couldn't make it. So how do you continue being enterprising as a family and find opportunities even amidst this pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
So that one. So there's a need really during this pandemic for reorientation and strategic planning. But I think one of the things many family businesses were forced to deal with in this pandemic is to reaffirm, reevaluate their sense of purpose of family working together in a business.
Oh,
Now
that.
more than ever,
Mm.
para bang they're put in this situation, we're in crisis, so magpapatuloy ba tayo? Hindi. How do we value this legacy talaga na binigay ni lolo, ni daddy?
Mm-hmm.
And then, ang sinabi nga ni Mylene, to the point to cut our losses, do we shut down?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the generation that shut it down.
Parang ganon. Ang hirap, di
Parang
ba?
gano'n, di ba? You're, parang bang
Yeah.
makukonsensya ka that there are things beyond your control and you believe this business was a
Mm.
legacy built by you probably if you're the founder
Mm.
and then also or your father or grandfather. So those are the challenges I think many family businesses would have to not would have dealt with during
Mm.
this pandemic, and there's a need for reevaluation. And again, related to the industry already of Mylene, there's a strong call right now more than ever to digitally transform. So
Yeah.
isa sa mga ano yan, adapting to the new normal and kasama yung digital transformation dyan.
Oh, Neil, I understand you have several clients who have also who you consult for, no? Parang what were their own experiences? Ano yung mga nakukwento nila sa premiere about how they're struggling with the with the pandemic?
One is, of course, everybody has most industries right now have low sales. So of
Yeah.
course, obvious,
Yes. Yes.
mahina ang kita. So
Mm.
and then for those families, and I would like to believe Mylene's family was better prepared because of the 1998 global crisis. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have learned their lesson. So probably they have more retained earnings
Mm-hmm.
to go back to
Yeah.
get from in order to sustain themselves for no earnings for the next 5 or 6 months for the past 5 or 6 months. So one of the things ang struggle nila is yun, no? How do you keep those people? Tapos mahina yung kita. So a
Mm.
lot of family businesses were forced by circumstance to retrench. So
Yeah.
yan. And that's very painful because there are some people that has been like family. The other one also that was a big impact to family business is imagine you incurred loans because you wanted to to diversify your business. You
Mm.
incurred loans because nag-reinvest ka into, let us say, real estate. And then suddenly the pandemic comes.
Mm.
Imagine you incurred loans and you were hopeful that things will be normal. You have something to pay to the bank, but walang income.
Yeah.
So how do you manage those loans? Wala kang income, but you still have to pay your loans. So that's very, very common right now among family businesses,
Yeah.
especially those who are heavily invested in real estate.
Because these are also negotiated through the banks, right? So
Correct, correct,
and
correct.
yeah, and they also need capital from coming from the banks. So I mean, in terms of like in your experience being a consultant for Premier, how do families in business really try and what method is there a method that you use to help families in business really try to protect their wealth and their assets during times like this?
It's a very good question.
Yeah, so
Because this is it, no?
mm-mm,
My answer is somewhat related to your past question. One thing that affected family businesses right now is, if you notice, many of the founders or the leading generation are senior citizens,
that's right. Mm-mm,
and they are the susceptible members of society right now because of the pandemic.
mm-mm,
So they cannot be as active in the past 5 or 6 months in doing the business, because they are part of the vulnerable member of society right now because of this pandemic. You're talking of the 60-year-old CEO, the 60-year-old chairman of the board. And
who
that's a
is
big
probably
transition.
who probably has hypertension
Yeah.
or
So
something.
that's a big challenge, huh? A
Yeah.
big challenge from the family, from the point of view na for the longest time, dad was so into it. But right now, although there is Zoom, he cannot be as active as he wants to be because of health reasons. And also imagine the psychological uh, adaptation of the founders who are in this age, no, na from somebody who is so active, so gung-ho to build the business, not build, to grow the business, then you are like restrained because of the pandemic. So that's a family challenge.
Mm-mm.
So it goes without saying that family businesses now sees the vulnerability right now of the older generation. So very relevant yung tanong mo na we have to start planning. In fact, this pandemic probably is a trigger for many family businesses to do something they have often delayed. Let's plan the wealth
Ahead.
transition.
Oh.
Kasi hindi na tayo sigurado what will happen, right? And so now I go directly to your question. There are, from my good friend, our good fellow partner consultant, attorney Jim Lopez, I've learned two things about asset protection.
Mm.
There is what he calls soft structure and hard
Soft,
structure. Parang
soft and
software,
hard
hardware.
structure.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So there's no rule which goes first, but the idea of soft structure is the family should be able to come up with common values, common visions of the future. They should have agreements on how they would manage family and how they would manage the business, how they will organize ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something probably not written, it's internal. Okay, so this para bang nagkakaisa sila because they have this meeting every so often. They have, these are their traditions of keeping the family harmony. Sinabi ni ano yan ni Mylene, no, the
Mm-hmm.
importance of family harmony.
Kanina, no? She really articulated that para sa for
So
everyone.
this
Yes.
is about the family culture. This is about the family values. These are the family practices that somehow help in sustaining business growth and family harmony.
Okay.
So these are a mix of many things that the family does. Okay, so that those are the soft structure. Yung para bang, maybe in a nutshell, um, bahala na hindi masyadong formal, but in essence, nagkakaisa kayo.
Parang it's like a common culture
Common
that you
culture.
agree
And
on certain kumbaga certain
areas.
areas na moving
Correct.
forward it should be like this. So
Correct. And
mm,
that was something noteworthy and admirable from Mylene, because besides that, her father was a visionary of the industry that he chose, technology,
mm,
no?
yeah.
Technology will be here for a long time, and he discovered that way back 1966. That's really very very bright and brilliant of him. But one thing is, when he called Mylene to join the family business, he adopted a policy, and I guess I like to believe the family agreed on it, and that is a one-child policy. Isa lang ang magtatrabaho sa negosyo. That
Tama.
is a protocol. So actually, without unknowingly, the Abiva family or Mylene's family were already doing best practices. You establish already policies before the need. Before tayo magkagulo, maggawa tayo ng mag-usap muna tayo. So medyo one step ahead talaga yung dad niya, and that's something very uh, I would like to say kudos to Mylene for that,
Yeah.
for that sharing. So that's one. So those are the soft structure. But at the end of the day, to play safe, you have to put the hard structure. This will take time. This will take a lot of documents. Ito na yung let's formalize everything.
Mm.
Let's come up with a corporation. And yung mga
Okay.
agreements natin, pwede nating ilagay yan sa shareholders agreement. Pwede natin ilagay yan sa articles of incorporation. So, yun na yung mga hard structures. So,
Yes.
basically, yung heart and soul ng family has a legal backbone. So, that's the
Okay.
hard structure. So, in terms of asset protection and wealth management, both are very important. Kasi kahit may legal structure ka, pero hindi maganda yung samahan ng pamilya, mahahanapan ng butas yan eh.
Tama. So we'll go back again on this topic, Neil. For the meantime, we just pause for a commercial. Okay. Welcome back. You're still watching The Family Business on TNC. So we go back to our guest, Mr. Neil Montesclaros of Premier Family Business Consulting. So thank
Yeah.
you. So before we went into a break, we were discussing about the journey of the family of Mylene Abiva or Felta. So what can you say about the story that she shared with us earlier? I mean, in terms of, is this typical of families in business that they experience these things?
Okay. So actually yung mga challenges na sinabi niya that
Mm.
she shared, they're all common in family business. But one thing
Right.
unique about Mylene's family business journey, typical yan, yung tipong there comes a point mag-SOS na si tatay no,
Right.
na I will have to find a successor. Ang maganda lang is at the onset, so this is like something na pwede siyang gamiting model journey yung sa kanila because at the onset, her dad, who unfortunately died 12 years ago, basically said that para walang gulo, o para walang, to avoid possible conflict, yun, yung sinasabi niyang sibling rivalry, one child
Right.
policy. Ang maganda rin is, sabi nga, Mylene oblige.
Okay.
Kasi magiging iba yung storya, tapos ikaw yung napili, tapos ayaw mo.
Right. Right.
Right? So it was just a very good story because she was the good daughter who just felt that the honor at the same time the duty. I think she mentioned the word duty
Yeah,
to come
that's
back.
right.
Correct. And magandang motivation yan for family business when you
She was
not so
already
much
abroad, 'di ba? I think we have families na ganyan, 'di ba? They're also abroad
one of
and
the
then
poorer
yeah.
one of the poorer motivation is being forced. Sa kanya naman kasi is not forced. He was invited and she took it upon herself as a
Mm,
duty. And
that's right.
people who actually help the family business with a sense of duty are generally very productive and perform very well. And that's the example of Mylene.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I could share sa story na that they all the good practices unknowingly the family has done it.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
it's like the son is third generation, and he came from also working in a corporate job in
Yeah.
branding, and now he joins the business. And
Correct.
apparently,
Correct.
none of the cousins wanted to join, right? So,
Correct.
it's
Again, that is again, they're like blessed or
yes,
lucky, because it will be a different story if, for example, other
nobody wanted
siblings,
to.
oh, one if Eileen said no,
Yeah,
the other one, there were other siblings, remember there were six. What if others contested the position of Mylene?
correct.
That would have been different
There's conflict.
dynamics.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, it's good na sariling anak ni Mylene right now ang, let's just say, available and willing and
Hmm.
competent. But
That's
it
right.
will be a very different dynamic if they don't have other protocols in place. If there were many of them who wants to serve the family business. So I would like to assume that I would like to hope that the Abiba family of Mylene, if ever that happens, they would have policies for that. So one
Correct.
thing is, isa lang ang nag-volunteer at isa lang ang pumayag. Paano kung marami ang may gusto, at how would you choose?
It's
Then
either
medyo
walang mag-volunteer or gusto lahat mag-volunteer. Eh dito sa case nila,
correct.
he was the only
Yeah.
one, 'di ba?
Of course, what I'm
Mm.
sharing right now in reference to Mylene is a little bit hypothetical. Kasi
Mm.
right now, swak sa kanila.
Yeah.
Right? So, but in other cases, it might not be like that.
Mm.
One thing probably, yung sinabi mo, pag offer ni Mylene to the third generation, walang may gusto.
Yeah, that would be a problem as
Right?
well.
And another
So,
one is kung maraming may gusto, tapos meron kayong one-child policy. I think the one-child policy works per generation. I would like
mm,
to interpret it like that. So one-child policy per generation. So sa
mm,
generation ni Mylene, siya lang. Sa generation ng third, yung anak niya lang.
mm,
I'm just speculating, right? So
that's
that
right.
could be. But again, even if the work yung one child policy nila for the first and second generation, or even to the third, there is no guarantee that it might be the most relevant and useful in the fourth,
Oo.
because by
So,
that time the dynamics would change. And
would be different.
but I'm confident,
Right.
yeah, I'm confident that with Mylene's namana siguro niya sa tatay niya yung foresight,
Mm.
no? Dapat ma-anticipate na nila yan, because an agreement or any protocol established by the family is not going to be, you know, etched in stone. It has
Correct.
to be dynamic. It has to be relevant as the environment changes.
Mm.
So hindi dahil meron na kayong pinag-usapan, there's the buzzword called the family constitution, nagawa na niyo yan, tapos wala na kayong
Mm.
problema. The family constitution is supposed to be a live document,
That's right.
meaning it has to reinvent itself from one generation to another. So
Mm.
that's going to be the challenge, I think, for Mylene's family, how they would update their agreements.
Mm. So before we go, I have a last question for you, Neil. So like, how can you, what can you tell these families in business that are now really suffering? What practical tips can you give, and what maybe inspiration you can give them? No? So
Yeah.
anyway, would like to thank our viewers as well. Before you answer
Okay.
that question, so may comment dito si Regine Rosilio. So puno ng enlightenment, best practices and learning. Will subscribe for sure. Thank you, Regine, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Sige, Neil, please.
So
Your last,
one thing, yeah. So what can I share as something to take home?
yes.
One is the family should maximize your human resources in terms of re-strategizing the family business. Whether you continue to strengthen the business that you have right now, or you would like to see opportunity because of the pandemic. Because one of the key factors of long-lived family business is their capacity to reinvent themselves from one generation to another. So this
Right.
is the capacity of the business to find new value in every generation. It's not it's doesn't have to be that you get stuck to the business of papa. So
Oo.
I would like to share something relatively parang philosophical right now. It's a mindset. Yes, there's a pandemic, but the family can have can see opportunity here. If their founder struck gold when the business began, this pandemic is another opportunity to convert hate to gold.
Mm-hmm.
In a crisis, it's good to think that there is opportunity here. So that's a mindset and an optimism that I hope every family business will be inspired. Then the other one is to do strategic planning. Once you do have an idea,
Yeah.
you start uh nurturing that idea, to do due diligence and start planning whether you're gonna be resilient with your existing business or you're gonna try out something new.
Correct.
One thing is to maximize all the human capital in the family. Isali mo lahat kasi anyway stakeholder yan eh. Have a
Mm-hmm.
good conversation with your family. Plot
Yeah.
out the future together. In There is strength in numbers, especially in a family. But
Okay.
we also could advise that if you feel that limited yung resources ng family, there are a lot of people also, third party, call them consultants, who might be able to provide some wisdom or some insights that family members may not see. So that's
Right.
something that you could also capitalize on or take advantage of,
Mm.
no? Because ask the help from other people. Other people could be other businessmen.
That's
Other
right.
people could be
Our colleagues.
consultants. So
Yeah.
the idea is, while you maximize the human resource of your capital, this shouldn't stop you to seek knowledge outside the family.
Okay.
And it
That's
could
right.
be friends, it could be peers, it can be professionals.
Mm-mm.
So because this pandemic is more heads is better
It's
than one.
better than one. Okay. Thank you, Neil. That's about all the time that we have. We'd like to thank you for joining us in the show. Thank you to Premier Family Business Consulting for lending you to us.
Okay?
All
Welcome
right.
always.
So before we go, we have the word of the day, and that is from coming from Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? That's Micah 6:8. So at 5:30, we'll be having Usapang Beauty after this show. We'd like to thank everybody. We'd like to thank Mylene Abiva. We'd like to thank Neil Montesclaros. If you want to know more about how your family business can be helped or handholded to go through this pandemic, you can just contact us at Premier Family Business Consulting. It's www.premierfamilybusiness.com, or you can contact me at premierbrandmanagement@gmail.com, or you may call me, or you can go to my FB page at Nato Agbayani, the business advisor page. So with that, we'd like to thank everyone, all our guests. Always watch the family business on TNC, and hope to see you next week. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.